Today, we're diving into a hidden force that shapes the internet you use every single day. And that force? It's your culture. Let's dig into how it literally designs the websites you visit.
You know that feeling? You land on a website and something just feels off, right? Even if all the buttons work. The writer Robert Coax put it perfectly. He said, "A profound sense of dissonance settles in, an intangible feeling of being an outsider." It's like this quiet, instant rejection, and it happens in a flash.
So what is that? What's behind that feeling? Why is it that some websites feel like they're rolling out the welcome mat just for you, while others feel, well, like they weren't made for you at all?
Well, here's the thing. A website's design, it's a language. It's the first language you encounter. It's this silent conversation that's happening the second the page loads, way before you read a single word. And in that split second, it's either building trust or it's putting up an invisible wall.
Okay, so how do we learn to read this silent language? We have to decode digital culture. And to do that, we're going to take a little trip, starting in the world of anthropology and bringing it right down to the pixels on your screen.
And the key, our sort of decoder ring for all this, is a concept straight from anthropology. It's called high context versus low context cultures. And really, it just boils down to how directly or indirectly a culture gets its point across.
So check out how this plays out online. On one side, you have low-context cultures. Think the US or Germany. Communication is super direct. Get to the point. So their websites, they tend to be minimalist, clear, all about efficiency. But then you have high-context cultures, like in Japan or parts of Latin America. Communication there is way more nuanced and layered. And the design reflects that. It's often richer, more detailed, focusing on brand story and aesthetic harmony.
And this leads to a really cool idea called semiotics. Basically, it means that every single thing on the page is a symbol. The icon you click, the font, the color, even how sharp the corners of a box are, it's all a tiny piece of cultural communication. Nothing is there by accident.
All right, theory is great, but let's get practical. How does this cultural code actually show up in the designs we see? We're going to dive into what's called the aesthetics of place and break down the core components.
First up, color. Now, here's a radical idea. The most authentic, the most powerful color palettes, they don't come from a color wheel on a computer. Nope, they're sourced directly from the local environment.
Think about a place like Arizona. If you source your colors from right there, you get those deep, earthy ochres from the soil, the muted, resilient greens of the cacti, those absolutely brilliant oranges of a desert sunset. What you end up with is an online aesthetic that just feels warm, earthy, and expansive. You know, it feels like Arizona, without even saying the word.
Okay, now let's jump clear across the country to Maine. Total contrast, right? Here, your palette is pulled from the slate grays of that rocky coastline, the deep, moody blues of the Atlantic, the dark greens of the pine forests. And the feeling? It's completely different. It's cool, rugged, resilient. See? That connection to a place is immediate, and it is so powerful.
And this idea, it goes way beyond just color. Think about typography. It has a voice, right? A clean, modern font like Helvetica says something completely different than a classic, traditional font like Garamond. Then there's imagery, using pictures of actual local people, local buildings, even the local plants. That builds trust in an instant. And finally, the layout itself. How much empty space is on the page versus how packed it is with information, that can reflect the actual rhythm of a culture.
So that's the theory. But what does this look like out in the wild? Let's check out 3 real-world case studies from around the globe.
First stop, Japan. And to really get Japanese design, we have to understand a core philosophy. It's called wabi-sabi. At its heart, it's a worldview that finds beauty in things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete.
And you can see this philosophy everywhere in Japanese minimalist design. We're talking asymmetry, a ton of negative space, natural textures, muted colors. A brand that nails this is Muji. Go to their website. There are no flashy banners, no crazy pop-ups. It's just simple grids and clean photography. The whole thing feels calm, honest, and functional. It's wabi-sabi, but in digital form.
All right, now let's head over to Scandinavia and talk about a word you might have heard, hygge. Now, it's often translated as cozy, but it's so much more than that. It's this deep cultural feeling of contentment, comfort, and just general well-being.
So you take that idea of hygge and you mix it with a cultural history that values function and community, and what do you get? You get Scandinavian functionalism. That's why you see all those clean lines, light color palettes, and tons of white space. It's all about creating a user experience that feels intuitive and just easy, human-centric. Check out visitfinland.com.
It's so simple, so inviting, it's designed to help you get what you need with zero stress.
And for our last example, let's look at the New England vernacular, right here in the US. This whole aesthetic is born from rugged landscapes, a colonial past, and maritime traditions. The key words are practicality and resilience, and you can't talk about that without talking about LL Bean. Their website is the perfect example. It's straightforward. The photos are all about durable gear out in the wild. The colors are earthy and practical. The whole site just screams durability and an identity that's totally rooted in nature.
Okay, so we've seen the theory, we've seen the examples, but so what? Why does any of this really matter to a business or a brand? Well, let's talk about the very real, tangible impact of getting this stuff right. Because this isn't just about making things look pretty, this is about performance. I mean, think about it. Search engines like Google are obsessed with user engagement, and a design that resonates on a cultural level, it directly impacts the metrics they care about. It lowers bounce rates because people feel like they belong. It increases the time they spend on your site because they're genuinely interested. And what does all that lead to? Higher conversion rates.
It all comes down to this: trust. Trust is the one thing you need before anyone will buy from you or sign up for anything. And a website that is culturally fluent, it builds that trust instantly, automatically.
And if you want to go even deeper, the most powerful designs tap into something called biophilia. That's our innate biological connection to the natural world. When designers pull in elements from the local landscape, the climate, even the plants, they're tapping into the very foundation of a culture's identity.
And that leaves us with a really powerful thought about where the internet is heading. It's not about building these generic, one-size-fits-all global websites anymore. The future is about designing for a global network of local communities. It's about creating a web that's just as diverse, just as rich, and just as authentic as the incredible world it connects.